Today, we're going to be bringing you the top 6 free-to-play combinations to use in open field combat in Rise of Kingdoms. If you're a free-to-play player looking to get value, contribute to your alliance, and help your team win, then stick around for the top pairings and talents that you can use. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming. We're updating our top 6 free-to-play combos for open field combat, and this was one of my most popular videos with over 200,000 views. This is a topic that you're passionate about, and we've got some updates for fall of 2020. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, consider smashing that subscribe button for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. We're a sponsored content creator, and this is the commander pairings I would strongly recommend you use as a free-to-play player. Now, I want to point out that there's a couple things that make free-to-play pairings powerful. First and foremost, we're looking at commanders that don't really care how strong your technology is or how much VIP you have. Now, there are commanders that have abilities like Joan of Arc that are giving you a bunch of rage restoration, that are giving you a bunch of stat points, and this bonus does not care if you have T5 technology or not. This is the sort of thing that makes a commander very, very powerful for a free-to-play player, because it is as good in your hands as it is in the hands of a T5 monster. Now, granted, the T5 monster is going to have higher tiers of troops, better equipment, they'll do more normal attack and counterattack damage, but still, you're much closer to having the same efficiency as that high-power player on a commander like a Joan of Arc. The other thing I want to do for you when I provide these pairings is I want to give you an evolution. So the 6th pair we're going to start with is something that's really good in the early game, and the number 1 pair we're going to give you is something that is really good for the late game as your account gets older and has evolved a lot. So we're going to start with commanders you have available to you in the beginning of the game based on our recommendations for the sorts of epics you should invest in, and make your way toward some free-to-play legendaries or very accessible legendaries to use in the late game. Now, for each of these pairings, we're going to focus on the primary commander and give you a couple secondary commanders that you could use, and we'll put them in the order that we would prioritize them. Now, the first pair we're going to look at, this is pairing number 6 in our list, is going to be Joan of Arc Primary. It's not a coincidence that we have her up on the screen. We still use her on our account. This account is over 700 days old. She is critical in Canyon. She's amazing on the field. I will probably start to rotate her out now that some other commanders are available, but for a very long time into the game, this is the free-to-play commander that you should start with. So if you're in the early game of Rise of Kingdoms, this is one of the first 3 commanders I think you should invest in, and this investment will last for a very long time for you. The commanders I would recommend that you pair with Joan of Arc in the very early game in Rise of Kingdoms is going to be a commander like Boudica. Then I would prioritize Sun Tzu. Then I would prioritize Pelagius. Why is that? Boudica is going to offer really a remarkable amount of utility. She has a rage reduction effect, which is going to reduce the effectiveness of the commanders that you're hitting. This, again, is the sort of ability that doesn't care about how powerful you are. Reducing the rage is great whether you're a 50 million power player or a 5 million power player. In addition, she's got some amount of healing and rage restoration to make your Joan of Arc buffs fire off more frequently. Similarly, I like the Sun Tzu pairing because he is going to offer a lot of area effect damage. He's going to reduce the damage that you take, and he also is going to restore more rage, which means you'll do more Joan of Arc buffs. The third commander that I recommend for the early game in Rise of Kingdoms was a Joan of Arc Primary with Pelagius secondary. This is very powerful for the rage restoration, as I was describing earlier, the sustain that he's going to offer from the 4th skill healing, and the ability to bring all cavalry, which do move faster on the battlefield. You've got a couple options for talents on Joan of Arc. Here's a build that I really like to use for bringing 1 troop type only. I'm bringing all cavalry with this particular build. But if you are bringing mixed troops, then I think this build would be the way to go. Start by getting Rejuvenate. Those talents are absolutely amazing. The support tree is phenomenal on this commander, especially when compared to the relatively weak strength of the integration tree. So focus on these talent points before you make your way up top to the integration tree. Let's head over to our 5th pairing. The number 5 free-to-play commander pairing I'm going to recommend is something that you'll want to start to invest in after you've already got your Joan of Arc, Boudica, Sun Tzu in a really great place. And that combination is going to be a Belisarius Primary with a Baibars secondary. The thing that I really like about the Belisarius Baibars pairing is that when they leave combat, they gain a ridiculous amount of march speed. So this combination is really great for running around and killing the gatherers of the opposing war camp. When you knock out their gatherers, they can't get resources. When they can't get resources, they can't wage war. It's kind of a big deal. So you take advantage of the fact that Belisarius is going to give you march speed when you leave combat. I was pointing the wrong skill earlier. And in addition, that Baibars is going to give you march speed when you leave combat. You run around from resource node to resource node to resource node, taking out their gatherers. You're nearly impossible to catch because you're going to use that Belisarius Primary for the mobility tree. The mobility tree has one very crucial talent. This is the fastest march speed build in the game, and with hasty departure, you move 60% faster every time you leave a resource node. You're honestly like nearly uncatchable. It's astonishing. So I really like the Belisarius Primary with the Baibars secondary for total shenanigans, running around, taking out gatherers, either during a Mightiest Governor or when you're waging war, even in Kingdom versus Kingdom. If the enemy has control of the zone and they're really comfortable gathering, but you still have access to it, man, you could run around and do some pretty serious work on their gatherers and get a bunch of value for your team. Now, as your account is starting to become even more evolved and you're investing in more commanders, you're naturally going to accumulate some number of sculptures of El Cid, which is going to lead us into our number 4 top free-to-play pairing. And that is going to be a Herman Primary with El Cid secondary. Yes, this is a legendary, but this is a commander that at 5/1/1/1, you're going to get a lot of value and utility. The reason you're going to use this combination of the Herman El Cid in that order is that you can activate a 3-second silence chain. That's right, for 3 full seconds, the enemy team cannot use an active skill. If you catch the enemy at just the right time, that is very, very powerful. And if enough players go and do this, you can really cause a lot of havoc and take down high-powered marches with remarkable efficiency. The Herman is going to offer you a 2-second silence, a huge amount of damage here, and also reduce the rage of the target. In addition, Herman is giving you a chance to restore more of your own rage, so you're going to go for a little bit of what I like to call a rage engine, picking talents that are going to give you lots of rage so that you can fire off these active skills that are going to make it so the enemy can't use their skills more often. So you want to generate lots of rage, and both of these commanders care about archers. The El Cid piece of the puzzle is a disarm. So after you silence the target for 2 seconds, they're going to be disarmed, which disables both their normal attacks and their active skills. Now, in general, I would prefer that you take your El Cid to 5/5/1/1. That's maxing the first 2 skills before you unlock the last 2. But if you were really serious about using this combo in the early game in Rise of Kingdoms, you could take your El Cid to 5/1/1/1, and the majority of the value you're hunting for here is the ability to disarm and prevent the active skill of your target from being used for that full 3 seconds from the Herman El Cid combo. Now, when we look in at talent points, in my opinion, there's really kind of only one way to go. I guess I'll give you 2 builds anyways, though. I really think this is what you want to do right here. All in on rage generation so that you fire off your active skills more frequently. This is, again, what I'm calling a rage engine. The more you use your active skills, the more rage you generate, which is a really good thing. That means more silences and more control over the battlefield. This control effect really doesn't care if you're a T5 monster or just have T3. They're control effects regardless, and they work very, very well. And for that reason, I would focus on rage generation rather than a full archer tree build, which would look something like this. This has the majority of the rage restoration that the other build had. It's just missing some of the talents over here and right over here, so you'll have slightly slightly less rage generation and damage. I don't think that's the way I would go. I personally would stick with this build right here. If you were making this build, here's what I would do. Start with Rejuvenate all the way up over here. You max that out. Then make your way over to Feral Nature. Max that out. From there, you want to make your way to Razor Sharp. You do want to max that out. Then I'd make my way up to Venomous Sting. Along the way, you're going to get some really crucial march speed. Max that out. From here, you've got 10 talent points remaining. You're going to want to make your way over to Full Quiver, which is going to give you some really sweet stats. Instead of Full Quiver, you could focus on your normal attack damage. You're not really here for the damage anyways, so all of that is just kind of an accessory to what you're really here for, which is the Rage Restoration. Now, the next combo we're going to go get a look at is something that will become available to you as you've been playing the game a little bit more, getting access to more commanders, making your way further and further through the expedition, because the primary commander in this third pairing is going to be none other than Aethelflaed. Yes, Aethelflaed, my friends, is a commander I'm still using. You can see I've got some crazy gear on her. I'm using her in Canyon right now. She is a phenomenal primary commander for a free-to-play player or a big spender, because she can hit up to 5 targets. And here we can see the 30% attack, defense, and health reduction of a target for 2 seconds. It's honestly just phenomenal. Aethelflaed is a one-trick pony. She's here to debuff, and she does it very, very well. She also happens to be fairly tanky because of her support tree, and for that reason, she ends up being a really compelling pick for a free-to-play player in the open field. She is vulnerable if you don't have access to a resource node, because you're going to very much leverage the hasty departure talents that she has in the support tree in order to navigate the battlefield quickly. That again gives you the 60% march speed boost when you leave a resource node or a flag or a city. That way you can avoid getting into a lot of trouble and being caught out of position. So in situations where you don't have those available to you, she is rather slow moving and can get into some serious trouble. With regard to commanders you would pair her with, I would recommend the following 4 commanders, although you could certainly explore other commanders here, and I would go in this order. The first commander I would use with her as a secondary is going to be none other than Alexander the Great. That's right, use all infantry. Alexander the Great offers a ton of utility that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video, and why he's really good for free-to-play players as well. As a 5/5/1/1, Alexander the Great offers massive debuffs, a good chunk of damage, shielding to yourself and your allies, which gives you crucial sustain, even march speed if you bring all infantry, which I would recommend even though Aethelflaed will do less damage. That is going to be my number 1 Aethelflaed pairing. It's going to be the Aethelflaed Alex. The next pair I would recommend is going to be Mulan. Now, Mulan is a commander that you're going to be getting from gold keys. At the time that you're starting to think about really using Aethelflaed seriously in open field combat over another commander like a Joan of Arc Primary, you probably already have enough sculptures of Mulan that she is 5/1/1/1. Now, I know at the time I'm releasing this video, she's very new to the game, but by the time a lot of people will be getting her, or for folks that are watching this in the future, this is going to be a commander you should have access to around the time that your Aethelflaed is getting to a really good place that you're going to want to use her in the open field. Now, why is Mulan really good? She's kind of like a legendary Joan of Arc. She offers a massive amount of buffs. She gives you some tankiness by reducing the amount of damage you take when you get surrounded, and also reduces the rage of the targets hitting you, which in turn reduces the effectiveness of those targets on the battlefield. She even can make the enemy take extra damage, which is a very phenomenal benefit for a free-to-play player to be offering on the battlefield. If you're not using Mulan, the next commander I'd have in the list is Joan of Arc. The Aethelflaed Joan of Arc, baby. A classic combo. It's a good combo. My preference is actually to have the Aethelflaed as the primary in this pairing, because the leadership tree is better than the integration tree. And so the Aethelflaed primary, Joan of Arc secondary, does a ton of debuffs, does a ton of buffs. It's a classic combo that has stood the test of time. The final pairing I would recommend with your Aethelflaed, and this is my lowest priority pairing, would be a Sun Tzu. You're going to do a lot of area of effect damage. You're going to hit lots of targets, which means you generate more rage. And this plays really nicely with the debuffing of the Aethelflaed, who, with the support tree, already is going to fire off her skills very, very frequently. So it starts to give her a bit of a machine gun feel to how frequently you're firing off the Aethelflaed and Sun Tzu abilities. It also is going to offer you some amount of tankiness here with the extra health and the damage taken reduction. So to quickly review the prioritization of those pairings again, our third pick here, our third best free-to-play pair is going to be the Aethelflaed Primary with the Alex secondary, then Mulan secondary, then Joan secondary, and then Sun Tzu. For Aethelflaed's Talents, here is the build I would recommend if you're bringing mixed troops. And I really like that this build gives you a ton of advantages for having those mixed troops. Armed to the Teeth and Armored to the Teeth are really exceptional talents. Start by going and getting Rejuvenate. From there, I honestly would make my way to Hidden Wrath to get that extra rage gen. From there, I might make my way up to Cage of Thorns, and you honestly could put more points into Cage of Thorns if what you want to do is emphasize the area of effect slow, which honestly is very good. Now, if you were going to bring a single troop type, which is totally reasonable, here's the build I would recommend. We're ditching these talents off to the side, Armed to the Teeth and Armored to the Teeth. I did invest more points into Cage of Thorns. Theoretically, you could drop some of those to pick Close Formation instead. I don't love Close Formation for an open field build, however, because look, if you get below 50% strength, you need to be leaving the battlefield anyways, not sticking around to enjoy the benefit of this talent. So I would recommend this build as you see it here. Let's make our way to the number 2 top free-to-play pairing for open field combat, and that is going to involve an Alexander the Great Primary. And yes, now I'm getting into the realm of legendaries, but guess what? By the time Alexander the Great is showing up in your kingdom, you definitely can have enough gems to spin the wheel for Alexander the Great, get a bunch of his sculptures, and take him to 5511, even if you're using a lot of universal legendary commander sculptures. And yeah, on my own restart account, which is currently 45 million power, this is exactly what I'm doing and have done. I actually have mine to 5551 on my restart account. Even if your Alexander the Great is not maxed, he is so good for free-to-play players. First of all, his shielding effect does not care about whether or not you have T4 or T5 or lots of tech or no tech at all. Check out my card up in the top if you want to see a video explaining why it is that shields don't seem to care about the level of your technology or your tier of troop. Now, the other thing I love about Alexander the Great for a free-to-play player is that yeah, you're going to do some pretty good damage here with the direct damage factor, but more importantly, you have a chance to do a 30% healing reduction. Again, doesn't matter if you're a T5 monster with the best tech in the game, or if you've got T4s and you just got your T4s, the healing effect reduction is 30% either way, and it's very, very good. You're also going to get some great march speed, so you can bring full infantry and not worry as much about your mobility. And if you expertise this commander, the utility of the Alexander the Great, I mean, it's truly exceptional. There's a reason I made my own logo look kind of like this guy, okay? Now, in terms of pairings, here are the 4, or I guess I'll go with 3 top pairs I would recommend for your Alexander the Great Primary. The first one is going to be Mulan. Mulan is a legendary tier Joan of Arc at 5111 or 5511. The utility is simply undeniable. The buffing is unbelievable and will be very game-changing for everyone who's around you. The next commander I would recommend is a Joan of Arc. If you prefer the rage restoration that the Joan of Arc brings, then she's the perfect pair with your Alexander the Great. The shielding is going to give them some sustain. She's got some healing of her own, which is really quite great. I like this combo a lot. You also can go in on some really exceptional talents that you otherwise would have had to kind of avoid because you're not doing extra skill damage, and we'll show that to you in just a bit. The final pair I would recommend is a Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is also an infantry commander and generates a ton of rage, which means more shields. Also, the 20% boost to damage will also elevate the damage of the second skill on Alexander the Great. The two are very phenomenal together. When we get a look at the talents I would recommend for Alexander the Great, here is the one build I would recommend to you, and there was a little bit of variation I suppose you could do with this. This is an open field build, and depending on who your secondary is, you may slightly change some of your talents. This gets a lot of march speed, which you're going to want to navigate your way around the battlefield. And the one talent that is really compelling to go and get is right over here, Martial Mastery. If both of your commanders are just doing normal attacks and you're not doing active skill damage, so let's say you're using the Alex Mulan or the Alex Joan of Arc pairing, then I would ditch the 2 points up over here, and then you could either drop some points from Effortless, which is generally very powerful, but you know, in the open field, you're not just going to stand there hitting a target for a prolonged fight. You also could drop a few points out of the march speed, or you could drop a few points out of health to get the boost to damage from Martial Mastery, which I think is honestly very good. The 2% boost to normal attack damage for 3 points, it's 6% boost, was really quite exceptional. The pairings we've shared so far get you a really long way in Rise of Kingdoms, but once you make it into the late game, if you migrate to a kingdom that is much older, you may have access to William the First. Now, William is a very powerful commander. He is in many ways a sort of legendary Joan of Arc, similar to how a Mulan is a legendary Joan of Arc. William gives rage restoration and less stats than you're getting with the Mulan. That comes from the 4th skill when his area of effect hits multiple targets, which if you're doing it right, yeah, this is going to hit a lot of targets, especially because we don't know exactly how buffed this is about to get, but we did see in the latest patch notes, card up in the top, that the area of effect of William is going to be expanded. Now, William is also doing one other thing I really like, which is he is removing the extra skill damage that commanders hit by his AoE will provide. So a commander like Isong is going to lose all of the bonus from their 4th skill, that extra skill damage, from this debuff, which is really quite remarkable. All extra skill damage from buffs cannot take effect. It's very powerful. William is also very good against targets that are getting surrounded, and it's important to note he's got march speed and is a cavalry commander. I like this because you're going to use your William to escape combat if needed. Having a cavalry primary affords you that because of the talents. We can get a look at those talents now. My recommendation to you is going to be to max the cavalry tree, to pick up Undying Fury, to get Effortless, and also to not leave home without armored joints. Because he has the versatility tree, which I generally think is not very exciting, there's actually not a lot of variability to this build. You're not going to go deep into the attack tree because this is really designed for like T5 monsters in the early game in Rise of Kingdoms. So you're going to focus on the cavalry tree. You're going to enjoy the charge talent, which gives you a bunch of march speed when you need to leave combat and your march is getting weaker. And you're going to dabble a little bit into the attack tree for some of the best stuff that is in there. Now, in terms of pairings, I'm going to have a few suggestions that might seem a little unconventional. And my number one pair for a William, for a free-to-play player who's only bringing 1 march, is actually going to be an Alexander the Great secondary. And you might be thinking like, what, Chisgule, that's crazy. But there's only one skill here that really cares about infantry, and it's this one right here. So if you've got a 5-5-1-1 Alexander the Great, yeah, you really don't care all that much about infantry. So you're going to get the full benefit of the 1st skill, the full benefit of the 2nd skill, the full benefit of the 4th skill, and okay, so you lose out a little bit on the 3rd skill. The shielding and the healing debuff, it's all just so good that, like, yeah, use them with William. You get a lot of sustain. It's very, very effective. That will be my recommendation for a free-to-play player bringing 1 march trying to offer the most utility. The next commander I would recommend is going to be Mulan for the reasons we've shared previously. She is going to fire off her buffs more frequently because you're generating more rage from the William. The defense might not stack perfectly with the defense provided by Mulan, but she is also providing other stats that you're not getting from William, and those other stats should also apply. The next combo I would recommend is going to be a Joan of Arc secondary to your William. Even if their buffs don't stack perfectly, the way the combat will work out with a William primary is as follows. William will use his active skill. Assuming you hit multiple targets, on the next turn you're generating extra rage and have extra defense. On the next turn, Joan of Arc uses her ability. You still have extra rage gen and defense. On the next turn, you have overlap of William generating rage, Joan generating rage, and William and Joan's buffs. Then after that, you're going to have 3 turns of Joan's buffs with none of the William buffs. And 1 turn later, you should have generated so much rage, you're firing off your skills all over again, which is kind of nuts. The pairing is very, very good, even if there isn't perfect synergy with their skills. They're very complementary. The final pairing I might recommend for the William is just going to be a good old Sun Tzu. He generates rage, which means you use the active skill on your William more frequently, which means you have more opportunities to do that area of effect bonus to rage restoration and defense. I also like that Sun Tzu is reducing the damage you take and increasing the damage that you deal. Sun Tzu slices, dices, and does it all, and is a great secondary in a lot of these pairings. The ranking again of the pairings for William, when William is the primary, would be Alexander the Great, then Mulan, then Joan of Arc, then Sun Tzu. Let me know what you think of these combinations down below in the comments. Some of these pairings, you really do have to be either migrating to an older kingdom as a newer player in the game, or you have to have made your way to the mid or late game with a lot of universal legendary commander sculptures that you ultimately can go and apply. The legendaries that I chose here are all available free to play from either gold keys or from the Wheel of Fortune, which again, if you're smart with your gems and very cautious with spending those, you can in fact have gems ready for when those wheels come around and unlock these commanders in a very value-oriented way, and then use universals to get them to a great place for open field combat. If you found this guide at all helpful, consider subscribing to the channel for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos and free-to-play guides. I'll have a card up in the top for a couple videos that I think you might find compelling. One around where you spend your legendary commander sculptures, and another around the effectiveness of Aethelflaed over time. And there's a reason that, yeah, Aethelflaed is on my list, but she's number 3 on the list. Again, running through that list top to bottom, or I guess bottom to top, you start with a Joan Primary, then go to a Belisarius Primary, Herman Primary, Aethelflaed Primary, Alex Primary, and last but not least, William Primary. The emphasis on providing those crucial buffs. Throw a like on the video if you learned something or enjoyed the recommendations, and until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.